Mojo! Tell him I knew I took the back way home at night! You tell him!
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we'll be looking at the most savage and iconic tales of vengeance in the history of mankind. Timur, a ruthless conqueror, forged an empire stretching from Central Asia to Persia. Known to Europeans as Tamerlane, he was a man of unmatched ambition and cruelty. His dominance was challenged by Bayezid I, the fiery Ottoman Sultan nicknamed the Thunderbolt, who disrupted Timur's rule by unseating local lords loyal to him. This defiance led to the catastrophic Battle of Ankara in 1402, in which Bayezid suffered a crushing defeat and was taken captive. To break Bayezid's spirit, Timur reportedly kept him in an iron cage, parading him as a living trophy during his campaign in Anatolia. According to legend, Timur even used Bayezid as a footstool during feasts. Humiliated, Bayezid allegedly ended his torment by striking his own head against the iron cage. Olga of Kiev. Olga of Kiev, a Viking descendant, was a woman of extraordinary cunning and resolve. After her husband Igor was murdered by the Drevlians, a neighboring tribe, she became regent of Kiev. The Drevlians boldly proposed that Olga marry their prince in order to solidify their control over Kiev.
Пойди замуж за князя нашего. За мало.
Имя такое. Мал.
Древлянского князя нашего.
What followed was the stuff of gory legend. Olga welcomed the Drevlians' emissaries into her court only to have them buried alive, then incinerated the next delegation while they relaxed in a bathhouse. She followed this with a demand that the Drevlians hold a feast in their city, where she orchestrated the massacre of thousands of drunken revelers. Finally, Olga lay siege to their capital, using incendiary birds to burn it to the ground.
Огня!
Eliahu Itzkovitz. As a boy, Eliahu Itzkovitz and his Jewish family were interred at a concentration camp, where he witnessed them get killed by a Romanian guard named Stănescu. After the war, Itzkovitz tracked down and killed Stănescu's son, which led to a 5-year prison sentence. Upon his release, he emigrated to Israel and joined the IDF. When Itzkovitz learned that Stănescu had joined the French Foreign Legion, he deserted the IDF, infiltrated the Legion, and secured his transfer to Stănescu's unit in modern-day Vietnam. After a firefight left them alone, Itzkovitz confronted his family's killer and executed him with a Tommy gun. He subsequently retired from the Legion and turned himself in at the Israeli embassy in Paris for deserting the IDF. Jeanne de Clisson. Jeanne de Clisson, a 14th-century French noblewoman, was known as the Lioness of Brittany. Her life took a dark turn when her husband, Olivier de Clisson, was accused of treason and executed by King Philip VI of France. Olivier's head was then displayed on a pike for all to see. Enraged by this perceived injustice, Jeanne vowed revenge against the French crown.
He chose his own fate.
And you have chosen yours. We will fight. And you will die.
She sold her estate and amassed an army of 400 men, leading them to sack several strongholds in Brittany. She then purchased 3 warships, painting them black and outfitting them with crimson sails. For over a decade, Jeanne terrorized French ships in the English Channel, ruthlessly killing their crews, but always sparing one survivor to spread her legend.
Gentlemen! Hoist the colors.
Queen Boudica.
And so I had to wreck 'em all, tear down every Roman wall, unleashed all my fury on every Roman centurion.
Queen Boudica of the Iceni was a proud warrior queen in ancient Britain who was fiercely protective of her people's independence. When her husband died, the Roman Empire seized her lands, capturing Boudica and her daughters. She was flogged, and her daughters were violated, atrocities that ignited an unquenchable thirst for vengeance. Boudica united neighboring tribes and led a massive rebellion, cutting a bloody swath across Roman Britain.
These leeches have gorged on our blood long enough. Tonight, they will choke on it!
She razed the cities of Camalundinum, Londinium, and Verulamium, slaughtering tens of thousands. Boudica spared neither Roman citizen nor Briton collaborators. Her vengeance was total. Her wrath, an unrelenting storm that left Roman Britain scorched and bloodied. Though her rebellion was ultimately crushed, Boudica's brutal retaliation shook the empire to its core.
Boudica! Boudica, excuse me. You seem very confident today.
Well, we've got the Romans outnumbered! Our 100,000!
The Jewish vigilantes of Nakam.
The Nakam's targets would not be one or two Nazis who'd got away, but instead, the entire populations of 4 German cities.
Before Marvel popularized the Avengers, the name belonged to a group of Jewish Holocaust survivors turned vigilantes. Known as Nakam, they had one mission: to exact vengeance on behalf of 6 million murdered Jews. Led by Abba Kovner, Nakam took bloody revenge for the wholesale slaughter of their families and communities.
It conveyed the message to the world, to future generations, that Jewish blood could not be spilt with impunity.
Driven by grief and fury, Nakam sought to, in their minds, even the scales by indiscriminately murdering 6 million Germans. Plan A aimed to poison the water supplies of major German cities. When this failed, they carried out Plan B, using arsenic to poison loaves of bread distributed to Nazi prisoners. The bread sickened more than 2,000 prisoners of war, though the arsenic was likely spread too thinly to be lethal.
כל מה שעשינו, אני לא מצטער על שום דבר, לא רק שאני לא מצטער, אלא עשינו פחות מדי.
Ivar the Boneless.
Secretly, Ivar was conceiving something far bigger and bloodier than a mere smash-and-grab raid to punish his father's killers. King Ella's reckless act would provoke Ivar into invading the whole of England.
The accuracy of this tale is heavily debated by historians, so it might not be entirely accurate. The tale goes that several years after supposedly leading the sack of Paris in 845, Ragnar Lodbrok was shipwrecked on the coast of Northumbria. According to Norse sagas, the local lord, King Ivar the Second, captured and executed him by throwing him into a pit of vipers. Illa's satisfaction would be short-lived, however, thanks to Ragnar's son, Ivar the Boneless. After his father's murder, Ivar and his forces invaded Northumbria. Together with his brothers, Ivar captured Aella and allegedly executed him by Blood Eagle. Ailla's back was flayed and his ribs pulled out to resemble the wings of an eagle as he died in agony.
The sagas say that Ella's punishment for killing Ivar's father was to suffer the Blood Eagle, a stomach-churning, blood-drenched Viking ritual.
Justinian the Second. Justinian the Second was the last Byzantine emperor of the Heraclian dynasty. Deposed in 695, his enemies mutilated him by slitting his nose, earning him the moniker Rhinotmetos, or the Slit-Nosed. Exiled and humiliated, Justinian bided his time, stewing with rage. After a decade, he reclaimed the throne with the help of Bulgar and Slavic allies, unleashing a wave of terror upon his enemies. He fettered his usurpers, Leontius and Tiberius, in chains, parading them before the crowd at the Hippodrome. There, wearing a golden prosthesis, he used them as footrests. After their humiliation in front of the jeering crowd, Justinian had them beheaded. It launched a wave of executions that left the sands of the Hippodrome stained by the blood of his enemies. The 47 Ronin.
You passed their test. Your men are safe. You've got your swords.
Asano Naganori, Lord of Ako, was reputed to be a man of great integrity. When he refused to bribe a corrupt court official, Kira Yoshinaka, he was provoked into drawing his sword. In the shogun's court, this was a capital offense. He committed seppuku, and his devoted retainers were stripped of their honor. No longer samurai, these Ronin feigned submission while meticulously planning their revenge in secret. Eventually, they launched a night raid on Kira's estate, slaying his guards and finding him cowering in terror. They beheaded Kira and placed his head at Asano's grave as a final tribute to their fallen master. Their unwavering devotion moved the populace, forcing the shogun to allow them to commit seppuku and retain their honor. Genghis Khan. On the road to forging the largest land empire in the history of the world, Genghis Khan conquered the Karakhatans. As a gesture of goodwill, he sent a trading convoy to his new neighbors in the Khwarezmian Empire, including a group of Muslims to honor the region's dominant religion.
How did this illiterate outcast turn the feuding tribes of Mongolia into a powerful nation? And how did he transform the Mongol hordes into a ruthless and disciplined fighting machine?
However, Inalchuq, the governor of the capital city and ruler of the empire, dismissed Khan's power. He slew his delegation to a man, sparing only one survivor to act as messenger. Enraged, Khan responded by conquering Khwarezmia in a rage of blood and fire. As his empire fell, Inalchuq was allegedly brought before the Great Khan. According to legend, he was executed by having molten silver poured directly into his eyes and ears. Joaquin Murrieta. The widely known story of Joaquin Murrieta is a mix of history, myth, and legend.
Joaquin has been credited with inspiring not just the image of Zorro, but by extension the image of Batman.
While it is generally accepted that he existed during the 19th century, most of the established details of his life seem to have come from a fictional biography written by John Rollin Ridge. Legend has it that Murrieta and his brother were attacked after being wrongly accused of stealing a horse. This resulted in his brother's death. Fueled by a quest for vengeance, Murrieta reportedly recruited a gang and hunted down the killers one by one.
Help! Save an innocent man!
An innocent man doesn't hang from a tree.
These crimes drew significant attention and led to a bounty being placed on Murrieta's head. He is said to have been killed in a gunfight with the California Rangers in 1853.
Joaquin Murrieta is a poetic concoction, an image, a symbol, and a myth that will feed generations to come.
Buford Pusser. Soon after becoming the sheriff of McNairy County in Tennessee, Buford Pusser waged war on crime syndicates in the area.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the gentleman whose life is the subject of the movie Walking Tall, Buford Pusser.
This certainly didn't make him any friends in the criminal underworld. Pusser was the target of several attempted assassinations and managed to escape all of them alive. Unfortunately, his wife wasn't so lucky. In the early hours of August 12, 1967, Pusser's car was ambushed by gunmen who killed his wife Pauline and left him severely injured.
Pauline? 501's emergency.
Pusser vowed to avenge Pauline's death, linking the attack to Kirksey Nix, a former Dixie Mafia boss, and also naming other accomplices. While Pusser never got to exact his revenge on Nix, the other named accomplices were all reportedly killed under mysterious circumstances. Pierre Picaud, the real-life Count of Monte Cristo. After his engagement to a rich woman in 1807, Pierre Picaud, a shoemaker from Nîmes, France, was wrongfully accused of treason by his envious friends, Lupin, Solari, and Chabard.
And if you're thinking just now, why me, oh God? The answer is, God has nothing to do with it.
Upon his release from prison, Picaud spent a decade devising his revenge plot. Seemingly without much effort, he ended the lives of Solari and Chabard. But for Lupin, who eventually married Picaud's fiancée, things took a twisted turn.
How did I escape? With difficulty. How did I plan this moment? With pleasure.
Picaud went after Lupin's children, arresting his daughter's husband, which led to her dying of shock, and having his son sent to jail. He also gutted Lupin's finances by having his restaurant burned down before eventually killing him. This elaborate plot only came to light after Picaud confessed to the police. Julius Caesar. Years before he became a member of the first triumvirate of Rome, a then 25-year-old Julius Caesar was traveling across the Aegean Sea when he was abducted by Cilician pirates. His ransom was set at 20 talents of silver, but Caesar himself asked them to raise their offer to 50.
The pirates must have thought they'd hit the jackpot. When you demand a ransom, you don't expect your victim to start trying to negotiate upwards.
During this period, Caesar maintained his nobility and refused to behave like a captive. He reportedly promised the abductors that after his release, he'd return and crucify them all. And he did just that.
The pirates let Caesar sail away to the nearby port of Miletus. It was a fatal error.
Upon regaining his freedom, Caesar assembled a fleet of ships, with which he pursued and captured the pirates. The future Roman dictator kept his word and crucified every last one of them. The women of Kasturba Nagar, India.
Why did the women of Nagpur feel the need to kill?
Kasturba Nagar is an Indian slum that was terrorized by a notorious criminal known as Aku Yadav. Yadav assaulted dozens of women, killed at least 3 people, and was known to invade people's homes and extort from them. On August 13, 2004, Yadav was scheduled to appear in court for a bail hearing. After word got around that he was likely to be released, hundreds of women swarmed the courthouse with knives and chili powder. Right there in the building, he was lynched by the women, many of whom had been his victims.
Aku Yadav, a local criminal, was stabbed and stoned to death today.
They stabbed him multiple times and poured chili powder on his face, leaving the man that had tormented them in a pool of his own blood.
It was an arranged, planned murder which had something very fishy, which is still unexplored.
Mariya Oktyabrskaya. As the wife of a Soviet army officer, Mariya Oktyabrskaya developed a flair for the military and acquired extensive weapons knowledge. After being evacuated to Siberia during World War II, Oktyabrskaya learned that her husband had been killed on the front lines. In a bid to avenge his death by Nazi soldiers, Oktyabrskaya sold all her belongings and purchased a T-34 tank, which she requested to drive herself.
When 38-year-old Mariya Oktyabrskaya arrived with her T-34 tank in Smolensk, the soldiers thought it was a joke.
Following a 5-month training program, Oktyabrskaya joined the war and participated in multiple assaults against German forces.
It was widely considered as an act of ridicule, and almost no one treated her seriously. However, Mariya, seeking revenge on the Germans, proved very quickly how wrong they were.
Unfortunately, in January of 1944, she was struck by a shell fragment and went into a coma for 2 months. She died in March and was posthumously conferred the title Hero of the Soviet Union.
For her courage and acts of fortitude, she was awarded the highest medal of the Soviet Union.
Diana the Hunter. In August of 2013, 2 bus drivers in the Mexican city of Ciudad Juarez were killed by a blonde woman who had boarded their buses.
There are details in the investigation files showing similarities between the crimes, the times, and how they were committed and the weapon used.
A few days after the murders, local news outlets received emails from an unknown woman who called herself Diana the Hunter of Bus Drivers. In the letters, Diana owned up to the killings, which she claimed to have carried out as revenge for the many ladies who suffered assault at the hands of bus drivers in the area.
That's why I am an instrument that will take revenge from many women. We are seen as weak, but in reality, we are not. We are brave.
In the years prior, dozens of women in Ciudad Juarez had disappeared after last being seen on buses, but hardly anyone paid for those crimes. The identity of Diana the Hunter, however, has since remained unknown.
In at least one instance, she was described as being dressed up in a cap, plaid shirt, and jeans. But beyond this, the details were practically non-existent.
The Dachau Revenge. The Dachau concentration camp, located in the state of Bavaria in southern Germany, was the first of its kind opened under the Nazi regime.
Up to 30,000 people were entombed here at one time, and 30,000 were present when the Allies reached Dachau.
Although it was initially intended to hold political prisoners, it eventually became a place of confinement and torture for citizens of other countries occupied by Germany. On April 29, 1945, Dachau was liberated by American soldiers, who were horrified by the conditions in which they found its prisoners. Driven by rage, the soldiers reportedly lined up dozens of SS officers and guards who oversaw the horrors that took place in Dachau. They then allegedly executed them in retaliation for these crimes.
There were some guards who tried to flee dressed as peasants. However, they were recognized and killed as well.
The controversial ordeal has been seen by some historians as a possible war crime.
Nobody has ever stood trial before the court for this reprisal. General Patton, then military governor of Bavaria, dismissed all the charges.
Operation Wrath of God. The 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich were largely overshadowed by the massacre of 11 members of the Israeli Olympic team by a Palestinian militant group called Black September.
Once the firing stopped, all 9 of the Israeli hostages, a German policeman, and 5 of the 8 terrorists were dead.
In response, then Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir sanctioned a secret operation known as Wrath of God to avenge their deaths. The campaign, which was carried out by Mossad agents, was targeted at those directly and indirectly involved in the Munich massacre. Over the next few months, Mossad agents executed covert assassination plots, taking the lives of more than a dozen people they believed were linked to the Olympics incident.
Oui. Mahmoud Hamshari. Yes?
In 1973, following the murder of an innocent man in Norway after being misidentified as one of the targets, the operation was suspended.
But as long as you're going after the bad guys, people can either look the other way or quietly applaud you. The minute you make a mistake, then it all turns downwards.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. The Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. Before the 7th of December 1941, the United States remained neutral during World War II. That all changed after the naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii was unexpectedly attacked by Japan, leading to the deaths of more than 2,000 Americans.
The plan for attacking Pearl Harbor was to destroy the U.S.'s Pacific Fleet, a move which would give the Japanese time to carry out its plans to keep control of the Pacific without U.S. interference.
Fast forward nearly 4 years later, on the 6th and 9th of August 1945, the U.S. respectively dropped 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 2 Japanese cities. Soon after, Japan surrendered to the Allied forces. The devastating attacks killed between 129,000 and 226,000 people and left long-lasting effects in the communities. In an address to the nation after the bombings, then-President Harry Truman referred to them as reciprocation for the attack on Pearl Harbor. As long as there have been people wronging one another, there have been people out for vengeance. Do you know of a tale of bloody revenge? Let us know in the comments below. Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.